Caregiving can sometimes feel like an impossible struggle. Caregivers may be torn between taking care of loved ones and trying to maintain balance in life. The good news is that it doesn't have to be that way. The Caring Generation with host Pamela D Wilson is here to focus on the conversation of caring. You're not alone. In fact, you're in exactly the right place to share stories and learn tips and resources to help you and your loved ones. So now, please welcome the host of The Caring Generation, Pamela D Wilson.
I'm Pamela D Wilson, caregiving expert, speaker, consultant, and guardian of the Caring Generation. Thank you for joining me for this week's show, episode 216. Before we jump into this week's topic, which is when siblings disagree on care of elderly parents. If you find this podcast helpful, please take a second right now. Click on the like and follow button on your podcast app. Your participation through likes and follows helps the show reach more people worldwide looking for hope, help, and support for their health or when caring for aging or elderly parents, spouses, other family members, or themselves. I talk with a lot of adult children who ask how to navigate care of elderly parents when siblings disagree or when siblings are doing things that other brothers and sisters don't believe is right. These can be very complicated situations depending on whether you are at the beginning of a care situation for elderly parents or whether this situation has been going on for some time. Maybe your brother or sister has done something questionable with mom or dad's money. Maybe they seem to be neglecting their care, ignoring what you believe to be serious situations, or maybe they've done something to cause emotional trauma such that mom or dad says, I don't like your brother or sister anymore. I don't want to see them. Don't tell your brother or sister. Or maybe mom or dad act uncomfortable when you ask questions or express concerns about what your siblings are doing. Almost as if your sibling might yell at them or harm them in some way. We could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours about sibling disagreements, about care for elderly parents. So for this podcast, episode 216, I want to limit the discussion to the early stages when you can make the most progress. As you might know or suspect, sibling relationships and relationships with elderly parents can easily go off track to a point of no return or to constant conflict that nobody wants to deal with. To make this easy to follow, I will share two stories to present both sides of a care situation for an elderly parent and some early and very basic steps you can take to manage through early disagreements so they don't blow up into this huge issue. Let's suppose you're in a situation beyond the two scenarios presented in this video. In that case, well, in any case, you can schedule a one-to-one consultation with me through the link below this podcast video or by visiting my website, PamelaDWilson.com, clicking on the Services tab, and then selecting Elder Care Consultation. There's a form on that page that you can fill out. The two scenarios I'm about to share are from opposite perspectives, so whatever side of caregiving you find yourself on, you probably can relate to one of these two stories. Let's start with number one. Are you caring for an elderly parent and your siblings are always in your face about one thing or another? Maybe they think you're not doing a good job or you should be doing more. They don't help because they're too busy living their lives. Scenario number two. Maybe one of your siblings is the primary caregiver for mom and dad and they're not very communicative or transparent. They don't give you any information. It seems like you're always the last one to know that mom or dad was in the hospital. Sibling relationships can be challenging, especially if you grew up and grew apart. Maybe you didn't get along when you were younger. Maybe you haven't maintained regular contact as your parents aged. Life gets busy. People get busy. Suddenly, mom and dad need help. And your parents want you to inform your siblings, whom you don't feel you have anything in common with, or whose belief systems are opposite from yours. What do you do? How do you care for elderly parents when you and your siblings don't get along? When you and your siblings don't see eye to eye? In fact, you may not even like each other. There could have been things that happened when you were younger. Maybe you or a sibling got involved with drugs or alcohol, but is now in recovery. However, you still don't trust that brother or sister because of their past history. Maybe you always fought because you felt your parents favored one of you. These emotions can stay with siblings throughout life if they're not discussed and worked through. Depending on your family or culture, sibling relationships may or may not be considered necessary or important. Why put in the effort to maintain a good relationship with a sibling you don't care about or who you don't plan to see very often? You could also be in a situation of a blended family, where your mother or father remarried and you have brothers and sisters-in-law that you don't know or you don't know very well. The why of putting in the effort to maintain sibling relationships or create relationships with siblings-in-law might be that eventually your parents will need care. When we're young, we have no idea that being a caregiver for a parent is something that will happen unless we see our parents doing this for our grandparents. So regardless of your age, how much you like or don't like a brother or sister, regardless of the history or the emotional baggage, ask yourself if you can or are willing to set aside your feelings to focus on the care needs of an elderly parent. The same goes for your parents. You may not like your mother or father, but you feel a duty and a responsibility to see that they receive care. No family is perfect. The critical aspect is we all have choices, even though they may be limited or we may not like the choices in front of us. If you can set aside your emotions, it can be possible to create a working relationship with a sibling or several siblings that you don't like, and honestly, who don't like you. To do this, you want to define a working relationship. Creating a working relationship means teamwork, giving up control, giving up having to be right, and sometimes working toward a mutual agreement where everyone agrees to compromise on some of what they want. You don't have to be best friends. You don't have to like each other. If you can agree to work with each other for your parents' good, that is your agreement. The agreement usually starts by identifying roles, setting boundaries, and creating and understanding expectations. Who is currently involved? What are their roles? Let's look at the two opposite situations again. The first is that you are the primary caregiver. This is your role. There could be many scenarios around this, but let's pick one that I hear most frequently. Your siblings occasionally show up, especially on holidays, to see mom or dad. Otherwise, they don't offer to help. And if you've asked for help before, they said no. So, of course, feeling rejected or unappreciated, you never asked for their help again. You're not going to do that. Your siblings are not in a caregiving role. Besides being your brother or sister, they're not involved in your parents' care except to call and visit whenever they have time. Since you're the one helping your parent, your mom and dad don't ask your siblings for help. But your brothers and sisters expect you to wait on them when they visit or during the holidays. They want to be hosted or treated as guests who come and go while you provide help for your parent. How do you change this dynamic that probably makes you feel angry and resentful? You start by initiating a conversation. Tell your brothers and sisters in a very kind and lovely voice that they can bring dinner and clean up after dinner the next time they visit. While you've done this because mom and dad asked, you're done being the host. That conversation might sound something like this. I wanted to talk to you about visits and holidays with mom and dad. In the past, I know I've always done all the work to make sure that food is in the house for your visit and to arrange holiday dinners at mom and dad's. I want you to know that I'm just not going to do this anymore. So if you plan to visit, bring groceries. If you expect a holiday dinner, please make the arrangements. I'd really appreciate this. I also want you to know I'm working on a plan to find other care options for mom and dad because I've been their caregiver for 2, 4, 6 years or more, and I can't continue to do this. Mom and Dad are aware of this as I've discussed my plan to move out of the role of a caregiver for them. Being the only caregiver, it's affected my job, my health, my life, my family, my friendships. I'm telling you this because I want you to be aware so you're not surprised if more things start to change in Mom and Dad's life. Now, depending on how your siblings respond, you can offer to set a family meeting to discuss the changes, pass off care responsibilities if your siblings have an interest, and share what you know about your parents' care needs. The bottom line is you shouldn't feel guilty for setting a boundary and choosing to move on with your life as long as there is a plan of care for your parents or you have discussed the situation. In some cases, parents will say they don't need any help. That's their choice. Sometimes parents don't realize everything a child did for them until that child ends their involvement. Your parents can always ask your siblings to help, hire outside assistance, move to a care community. They have choices. Let's shift to scenario number 2. You don't get along with your siblings. Your brother or sister has been helping mom or dad for years. Mom or dad appointed your brother or sister as their medical and financial power of attorney. You've always stayed in touch with mom or dad, but not really in touch with your brother or sister that you don't like. Suddenly, mom needs more help. And the information that mom is giving you is very limited. You're worried because you're wondering if she's forgetful, maybe she has memory loss, maybe she's just not feeling well. You start calling your brother or sister who you haven't spoken to in years. They're not exactly welcoming or friendly. They see you as nosy, demanding, disruptive, and as the brother or sister who never helped, but now you want to be involved. Your questions are taking up a lot of their time. You're upset because you have some ideas about how to help your elderly parents. But you're seen as the problem, that meddler, not anyone offering a solution. Should you be surprised at your siblings' reaction? I would say no, especially if you've been living your life and haven't offered to help or become involved in the care of your parents before now. Stepping in to request information and to offer suggestions or help may or may not be welcomed, depending on the level of exhaustion and burnout of your sibling caregivers. Your siblings, they're probably angry that you've been out of the picture for so long. So what are the steps to manage through both of these scenarios? Own your part. Own your actions. Take responsibility for your part in the family disagreements. Set aside your emotions. Focus on the parents you love. And most of all, remove expectations. Remove expectations that you will reestablish a loving relationship with your siblings. Remove expectations about what your siblings should do, how your parents should respond, how they should respond to you. Eliminate expectations that any help you offer will be appreciated. It may not. Learn about the care your parents need and make sure that you are really committed to being involved. Decide how much you can be involved and for how long. I can tell you that if your siblings have been doing this for a while, they probably had no idea what they were getting into. And at the present time, they may be totally overwhelmed. Give your brother and sister the benefit of the doubt if you see them as being frustrated. Now, if you were that primary caregiver, you may be the one who's burned out. You may be the one who's lost your patience with siblings on the other side who are now trying to help. The best thing you can do is talk about expectations. Expectations, especially regarding the care of elderly parents, they're like a minefield. One step right or left, and that situation can blow up. Set time to meet with your siblings and include your parents. Ask questions to understand where everyone is coming from, what they're thinking, how they see their role. Ask what everyone can contribute or not, and for how long. Ask about expectations. You might be surprised what you learn. Realize that depending on your relationship with your siblings and your parents, there may be a lack of trust. If your family has been divided for years, you're probably not going to get back together and become best friends. What you can do, though, is come back together. Talk about the support your parents need. Discuss who is willing to help and who can act in a particular role. If you're the caregiver whose siblings now want to get involved, this is your big chance to take a break and gain their support and involvement. Don't pass it up by being controlling or angry or aggressive. If your parents receiving good care is important to you, look at this situation as an opportunity instead of a problem or a hassle. Realize that to mend situations with siblings you haven't seen in some time or who you don't get along with, you may have to do more of the hard work, relationship, and trust building, at least initially. Regardless of which side you're on, set aside your ego and commit to do whatever it takes for your parents. Even more importantly, don't assume that you will sway everyone to your way of thinking. That's not practical. Don't even assume that your way of thinking is right. Make sure that you're asking questions to understand why people think the way they do. And most of all, show respect for siblings and your parents who may have very different opinions. Focus on the facts while recognizing that other people may be stuck in emotion and anxiety and worry. If necessary, find an independent person in the family to help with these conversations. This could be an aunt, uncle, another family member. It also may be a professional like myself. Talking about and managing care for elderly parents can require a lot of discussion, flexibility, and compromise. There is no magic solution or one right way to do it. There's a lot of options. And sometimes it does take trial and error to figure out what works. It's also important to consider immediate needs versus midterm needs and long-term needs. I can tell you that without a plan or a strategy, your family will continue to struggle with what to do next. You'll keep responding to the latest emergency. You and your siblings will continue to disagree. If you can, look at the care of elderly parents like a work project, where you keep your personal life separate from your work life. Dividing this experience can be a way to manage stress and maintain emotional balance when dealing with multiple people in your family and challenging situations. Create task lists, project lists, timesheets. Create a practical way to share the work. When you interact with your siblings, keep focusing on how your elderly parents will benefit from working together. Thank your siblings for everything they've done. Thank your parents for working with you. And realize most of all that this situation is probably not ideal for anybody, but that everybody is doing their best under the circumstances. Set boundaries about what you can and are willing to do and let other people do the same. This may be the best way to figure out how everyone can work together. Know that these discussions may not go as quickly as you'd like. It's difficult to jump in and solve problems you may not know or that others may not be aware of if everyone hasn't been involved, which they probably haven't. Whatever you agree to do, whatever agreements you make, keep your commitment. This will help you gain trust. Communicate with your siblings and your parents about what you're doing, when you're doing it, and when it's finished. Know that you and your siblings may need time to adjust to working together, even talking to each other again. Give everyone in this situation a little space and a little time to breathe. You'll be glad you did. I thank you so much for being here for episode 216, of the Caregiving Generation podcast. I'm Pamela D Wilson, a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. I look forward to being with you again soon. Please do share this podcast with everyone that you know who's looking for hope, help, and support. Your likes, your follows make a big difference for people all over the world. God bless you all. Sleep well tonight. Have a fabulous day tomorrow. And enjoy each day until we are here together again.
Tune in each week for The Caring Generation with host Pamela D. Wilson. Come join the conversation and see how Pamela can provide solutions and peace of mind for everyone. Here on Pamela D. Wilson's The Caring Generation.